Breaking news today where Anthony Rota has stepped down as House Speaker in the House of Commons after mistakenly inviting a man who fought for the Nazis during the Second World War to attend Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's speech in Parliament last week. Here's that announcement from Rota just last hour.
The work of this House is above any of us. Therefore, I must step down as your Speaker. I reiterate my profound regret for my error in recognizing an individual in the House during the joint address to Parliament of President Zelensky. That public recognition has caused pain to individuals and communities, including the Jewish community in Canada and around the world, in addition to survivors of Nazi atrocities in Poland, among other nations. I accept full responsibility for my actions. My resignation is effective at the end of the sitting day tomorrow, Wednesday, September 27th, to allow preparations for the election of a new Speaker.
And CTV political commentator Scott Reid joins us live now with his thoughts on all of this. Scott, good to see you. I guess first off, what is your reaction to hearing that Anthony Rota has officially resigned?
Relief, certainly not glee. I mean, it was an appalling incident. It's hope, and one would hope that this starts to put this behind us. I think the other thing is that for people, and you saw so much of this from members of parliament from various parties, that people that know Anthony Rota know that this was an honest mistake. They know, as appalling as it was, that it was done in error. And he really truly is a profoundly fine person. And, so there's no joy in this, but it was inevitable. There are mistakes for which sorry is simply not enough. Action had to be taken. A resignation was necessary. And, the long list of those demanding his resignation piled up over the course of the day and made that event inevitable.
So what happens next here? Because we just saw Deputy Speaker Chris d'Entremont stepping in for today, but obviously this is a process that we're going to have to see unfold over the next couple of days to find a new House Speaker.
Two things happen almost immediately, and you saw one already. The first is the opposition are not going to be satisfied with Anthony Rota. They want to extend blame and responsibility from the Speaker to the Prime Minister. So you'll see some politics for the next 24 hours, 48 hours. But then they've got to turn to the business very promptly of replacing the Speaker. That requires all members of Parliament to meet. It requires them to cast ballots. Candidates have to present themselves. They have to, build a behind-the-scenes consensus. And, it's a tricky business because you need to command respect and support from all sides of the House. So as an example, Anthony Rota became the Speaker largely on the basis of support from Conservatives, even though he's elected as a Liberal. There was a Liberal incumbent Speaker. He ran against that individual, and he managed to forge a wider consensus. So look to see in this minority parliament where those candidates will emerge. They're going to want to spend a bit of time building up their candidacies, trying to foster some support, and then we'll get a ballot. The work of House of Commons will be paused for a day while they vote on it.
Okay, so that's the logistics of the matter. But as you say, Scott, just having Anthony Rota resign doesn't mean this is over. I mean, we've seen fallout really internationally from this, with Poland stepping in to call for Rota to resign as well. We've seen, Russia use this to fuel their misinformation in terms of their invasion of Ukraine. How much has this situation hurt Canada?
Well, it's been a terrible embarrassment. I do think we get a bit breathless about it. I don't want to in any way minimize what occurred here. It was wrong. There was a Nazi celebrated, for Pete's sake, in the House of Commons. It makes your head shake. It's awful. It should not have occurred. And you're quite right. Putin has wasted no time in firing up the online bots and trying to make hay and benefit of this. But what's the ongoing, lingering impact? It's not going to fundamentally alter our relations with our Western European allies. It's not going to fundamentally alter our relationship with Ukraine. It's just an embarrassing incident.
Okay, because I'm not sure if you heard that in question period, Pierre Poilievre just saying moments ago that this is the worst blow to the country in our history. So I'm assuming you don't agree with that.
That's political exaggeration. There are plenty of things. I mean, you think back to all sorts of challenges we had during the Diefenbaker years, the Munsinger affair. There have been plenty of worse diplomatic controls over the years than this. But again, I don't want to minimize this. Imagine you're a member of the Jewish community. Imagine you're a member of the Ukrainian community. It was embarrassing and disgraceful. But it's not as though we're going to stagger under the weight of this for years to come when we gather with other international leaders. We're going to have a period of political domestic haymaking, and then this too shall pass.
No, and it absolutely shouldn't be minimized. This has hurt a lot of people. It was a grave error, of course. But, as you say, this is being politicized a lot. Obviously, the opposition blaming the federal government for this and dragging Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's name through the mud once again. Do you think that's valid? I mean, how much of a political issue really is this?
Well, it reflects badly on everyone. It was the speaker's responsibility. I think there are two things, and I actually think Blanchette, the leader of the Bloc Québécois, put it quite well. The truth of the matter is that this was at the instigation of the speaker. It was a person from his constituency. The speaker really rules the roost when it comes to that which happens in the chamber, the House of Commons, and that's what happened here. So I know the opposition are going to want to say, no, this is the explicit failure of the prime minister. That's not true. It didn't break down that way. But what Blanchette said that really rung true to me was, it may not have been the prime minister's fault, but it is his responsibility to try to fix it. And so will there be a broader set of apologies, phone calls to other leaders? You heard from Poland. So, do you call the Polish leader and say, well, we wanted to let you know that he did in fact step down, and obviously we apologize for any embarrassment. Certainly, I imagine he's already spoken to Zelensky. So, the prime minister can do some of the repair work in trying to put this behind us. But if the only acceptable outcome for the Conservatives is to have the prime minister say, by golly, you're right, I've been revealed, it was my fault all along, that's not going to happen, because that's not what happened.
Right, and I think it's hard to understand for a lot of people where the blame really lays here, because there was a lot of discussion over the last couple of days of the vetting process and how, even though this was the Speaker of the House office that invited this person into Parliament, the Prime Minister's office should have known about it in terms of for security reasons. So really, when we're talking about this vetting process, that's been talked about a lot over the last couple of days. I'm assuming that's going to be looked at moving forward as well when it comes to who's invited to events such as this.
Yeah, it ought to be, not because there is some grand conspiracy here and that somebody's lying or covering up, but because, if nothing else, this demonstrates a gap. So if the Speaker, as the person who presides over what we call the parliamentary precinct, the House of Commons, all the parliamentary buildings, if he can invite someone and then the only check that's done on that person is, effectively a police check to find out whether that person has a criminal record and is therefore maybe a potential physical threat, that's what happens. Well, that's obviously not adequate. You're going to have to run the numbers on who these people are and what their histories are. So I think you'll see some alterations to process. But those are things you can do to try to, avoid a repetition of this event. I would also underscore that, this is extraordinary. It's not the kind of thing that's happened ever before. It is a dime landing on its side. It's a horrible embarrassment. It's ridiculous and appalling. It shouldn't have occurred. I'm not convinced that it is wholly the fault of process. I just think it's a really weird, awful, objectionable circumstance. And I just don't know that, we would live for 100 years and have anything like this ever occur again.
Okay, well, let's hope not. Scott, I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us today.